What is this, an interview or a YouTube video?
This is neither, it's an interrogation.
I feel like it is.
Georgie Harris, good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Are you nervous?
Part of me wants to be nervous, but I think it's more the idea of it.
Part of you wants to be nervous?
Well, I think the idea of it makes me nervous.
Okay, I think you'll be absolutely fine. Camera guy Rob, are you nervous?
I am terrified.
Terrified, okay, cool. Thank you for coming on the channel. I think your story is quite interesting, and I think one of the things that will resonate with a lot of people, and one of the kind of the overarching topics that I would like to discuss today is how to build kind of a social media presence and a personal brand, being an introvert, which is a big part of your brand. But before we kind of crack on with that and some of the nuanced details, as a brief kind of bit of introduction and context, we met here in Dubai last year.
Yeah.
Started chatting, both in the fitness industry, became friends. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say best friends?
We're working on it. I think I'm, yeah.
Pending.
So Rob might be.
Pending. In the process of. Okay. So if you can give kind of a brief bit of overview as to your fitness journey, how you kind of came to be, where you came from, what your background is, and what you do now.
I can, yeah. So I was always like a very sporty child. So I think being active has always been part of my lifestyle. But when I left school, I sort of lost sight of that a little bit and gained a lot of weight, became very like focused on my body image. And that kind of, I think, got me back into fitness. And I kind of had set myself a challenge to do an Ironman. Everyone in my family had basically done one, and there was like a running joke that I was like, oh, Georgie, when are you going to do it? So the stubborn person I am decided to just sign up, not tell anyone. And at this point I was working like a 9-to-5 office job and ended up training for the Ironman, completed it, and kind of realized that that was like the best part of my day was the training. And I kind of found my passion, found my love for it again, and wanted to make it more of my lifestyle. And through being more active, I gained a lot more confidence in myself. And I think I then wanted to help other people do that, which is kind of how I got into PT side of things. And then since then, I've just been PTing for about 7 years, online coach for 5 years. And now I just kind of travel to different places around the world, work from a laptop. And I'm just sort of building a presence best I can, I suppose, in the fitness industry.
Everyone in your family had done an Ironman?
I say everyone, like cousins and my sister.
Great grandma smashed one at the weekend. That's a pretty, because that's not like an intro fitness thing. It's not like, right, I used to be really sporty. I feel as I've let myself go. I'll do the couch to 5K and then see where I get on. It's like the most kind of like end goal thing you can do in the endurance world. Is something that even endurance athletes kind of aspire to. So that's a pretty radical kind of step one of getting back into it. I
almost regret going straight to an Ironman though, because then I didn't have anything to do afterwards that would bring me the same like sense of achievement. So I remember doing it and being like, well, now what? But it was something that I trained for like an entire year. So I think it was that I didn't just want like a quick kind of like, I'll make myself feel better. I wanted like a proper challenge that I was going to have to dedicate a lot of my time to. And I think, having seen my sister do it, I knew what it took to do it, and I kind of wanted that for myself.
Yeah, had a bit of context for what would be involved.
Yeah.
Obviously, say you're an online PT, can you give a little bit more context, specifically what that means to you and your kind of role in that, and who exactly you help? So who are your kind of ideal clients?
Yeah, so I like to think of it as like me 7 years ago. Like me at the start of my fitness journey is generally, I'd say, majority of my clients are there. I do help people who are slightly further along in their journey. They've maybe sort of lost sight of that balance. They've taken things too far, and I sort of help them. They're maybe a little bit more advanced with their training, but they need more help with their nutrition and their mindset. And I just found like the online training was actually getting me a lot better results than face-to-face training, because you can give the client a whole 6-week, 12-week program that they do in their own time, and it's a lot more cost effective than like spending £80 an hour for one PT session where you don't really get any help outside of it. So I found for me it was a lot more, I felt a lot more fulfilled by what I was doing because I felt like I was helping people a lot better. It also gave me the flexibility, and I also found it worked for them better as well.
So it's kind of a way to give them more value in a way then, instead of being super intensely focused on that 1 hour and then having them leave sweating, legs burning, but like no direction on what the hell to do for the rest of the week. It's like, this is a way to kind of zoom out a little bit, look at it from a slightly more kind of holistic, all-encompassing point of view, and maybe not be there when they're executing the sessions, but give them kind of all the pieces of the bigger puzzle.
I think as well, it's more, then they have more confidence in themselves because they've realised that, yes, they've had the guidance and the accountability from a coach, but they've had to go out of their way and make themselves train at that specific time without, it's not like I say to them, you have to go and do this training session at this time. I tell them what they're going to do throughout the week. If they want to move it around, great, but you then learn, I suppose, how to fit it into your lifestyle instead of being like, oh, I have to go and train with this person because I've booked an appointment with them at 6 o'clock. So I think for them, they then realise that, oh, actually, I can do this myself, and I didn't need someone shouting at me the whole time. So that's kind of why I got into the online stuff.
And with the presidency you've got at the moment, what kind of people are drawn to you?
I would say similar to myself. Like I openly talk about on my Instagram about being an introvert, and I think it's probably something I've only spoken about in the last like two years. It's kind of in lockdown when I started to talk about it, but I'd say it was something I probably started to realise about myself maybe like 5 years ago. But I feel like I have a slightly different energy to most people in the fitness space, or most trainers, and so I think I tend to attract a very similar and like a smaller group of people that prefer the kind of I suppose a quieter, not sort of as much in your face. And I say that for like no disrespect to people who are very like shouty and like below
no disrespect to the drill sergeants that just spit in and shout at people.
Well, no, I think you have to be really careful when you talk about like introversion and extroversion. And you know, when I say introverts are like this, I don't have any problem with extroverts. I absolutely love extroverts. I spent most of my life wanting to be more like that. But as soon as you talk about introversion, you say, oh, you know, introverts are typically more this, more that. It's easy for then you to look like you're sort of saying that extroverts aren't like that. And so I think I have to be careful when I talk about styles of trainers, like the people who are very loud and motivating and in your face. It's a great approach for some people, but that's not the approach I take. I don't think that's wrong, but I'm just more of I kind of empathize, I listen, and it is more of, so it's just a quieter, less kind of like, I like to explain stuff as opposed to just shout and motivate.
I think that does come across though in your content and the way that you communicate. It doesn't, like for me, having kind of followed you for about a year or so, I don't feel as though it's like, it's preachy or it's like, it's hierarchical. I don't feel as though you're saying, I'm an introvert and we are obviously superior because of X, Y, Z. I feel as though it's just you kind of communicating that there is a difference and trying to bring a bit of attention to and maybe help extroverts understand what the difference is and and kind of give introverts permission to embrace that kind of side of them. I think that it very much kind of comes across that way.
Yeah, and I think that's something I felt quite passionate about, is trying to help, you know, to help not just extroverts but even introverts understand themselves. And I grew up always thinking that what's wrong with me, why am I not normal, and why do I not enjoy the same things that everyone else does. And I think a big part of what I've tried to share is like, that is normal. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. It is just different. And I think, trying to help extroverts understand that as well, so that they can then create a safe space for their friendly introverts to sort of feel like they can be themselves. Something I feel quite strongly about.
Good. Yeah. I think society generally, the culture, and especially in fitness, which is again like big flipping jazz hands, excitable energy for so many people, is it does glorify a slightly more extroverted behaviour, and it glorifies big energy, and it glorifies kind of, you know, loud noises, big messages. And I do think there has been a change that obviously you're probably kind of riding the wave of and part of over the last kind of maybe 5 years of kind of helping people understand that is not necessarily better, that's just different. And it's interesting that you say that you were, even as kind of a very self-aware adult, like, fucking hell, what's wrong with me? I don't want to be like this. And even vilified that part of yourself. So I imagine that's why it's become kind of a big part of your brand and your message to kind of communicate this to other people. Not only, this is kind of the way that this is the way that I experience things, and it may be a little bit different. This is my kind of preference. This is my like stimulation kind of threshold or whatever. And I've accepted it at this level, and I kind of encourage people, give people permission, encourage people to kind of assess where their own line is, as opposed to trying to force themselves to become a bigger energy.
Yeah, and I think that's where like introverts are so misunderstood, to the point where I still get people now messaging me telling me you're not an introvert. And I'm like, you literally don't even know me.
I disagree with your own diagnosis. I've seen 2 of your videos and I know that you're this.
Well,
cheers, mate.
I think even just having a social media following or being able to talk to camera, you're instantly, if you don't really understand what an introvert is, it might be easy to just assume that because someone doesn't mind being on camera, they're therefore not an introvert. But that's where I think what being introvert and extrovert actually, it's probably good to be like, talk about like what it actually means, because I do think there are obviously qualities that are associated with being more introvert and more extrovert, but it's actually more about like where you get your energy from, and like whether certain situations drain you. And so, for example, an introvert doesn't need much like social stimulation. They like to retreat into their own space, their home, whatever it is, and like recharge, whereas an extrovert they get like energy and fuel from being around other people. And like, yes, naturally with that, you then adopt certain qualities, I think, but those qualities don't actually define, like you can be an extrovert and have the qualities of an introvert. It's kind of like it's a spectrum. But I think, as soon as, I think shyness is one of the biggest things that people associate with being an introvert. So if they think that person's not shy, therefore they're not an introvert, it's not actually kind of how it is. But I think because people assume you're a fitness coach, you therefore can't be, your job is to motivate people and be loud and be in front of the camera and be in front of a group of people, and therefore you can't be this. And I found it funny when people would reach out and like just tell me like, oh, you're not. But, well, how do you know?
Do you think generally though, not only kind of your followers and the people that follow your channels and stuff, but do you think generally in kind of the modern Western world, people are starting to understand a little bit more of what the difference may be?
Yes, I think people are obviously talking about it more. I think the lockdowns almost made people realise that they might be more introverted than they thought.
Why? Because they've been in that situation, they're like, bloody hell, I actually feel better being around people a lot less.
Yeah, I don't know if that was like being able to retreat and just reflect a bit more, or whether it was just therefore realising actually I am okay with not having to go out every night and see my mates whenever they want to see me. And yeah, I don't know if it maybe created, no, I think it probably made people more aware of what made them feel better. Yeah.
I think the way that I kind of experience it is, I think the more that we try and define 2 words and we almost visually kind of see it as 2 ends of a spectrum, right? And it's like, there's a definition of this, there's a definition of this. You are 100% in one of those flipping buckets, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And the way that I'm starting to see it is like everything else, and it is subject to gradation, right? It is a spectrum. And you're talking about kind of where you get your energy from, and everyone will have a need to a certain degree to be around other people. Everyone will have a need to a certain degree to be in their own space and enjoy some solitude and reflection and kind of introspection. And it's just where along those lines that you are. That's kind of, does that make sense? That's kind of the way that I see it, as in like, it's not that you're in one of the 2 buckets and that's it. It's not a binary thing.
And I think you can move between them at different like stages of your life as well. I was listening to a podcast the other day about dopamine, and they actually talked about how there is like a physiological difference between introverts and extroverts, in that like an introvert only needs a certain amount of social stimulation to be fulfilled, like to have their dopamine levels like praise and they get that fulfillment, whereas an extrovert actually needs a lot more. And so I think everyone needs social contact and interaction. It's not like an introvert wants to be like completely fully hermit, but yeah, you can. It's just based on like the levels of, are you satisfied from going for that one coffee with someone, or did you need to go and see 10 of your mates, or like do lots of things that day? So yeah, that's kind of what
Is that because dopamine levels are generally lower in extroverts? So they're just further away from that threshold, and introverts are closer to that peak point of standard?
I don't know. I don't, because I know everyone has different levels of dopamine anyway. I don't think that would be. I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough about it.
It's okay. You're not a neuroscientist. We can forgive you for that. What do you mean? Go and listen to it again and come back. Kind of in the fitness industry generally, and just in life for you, because obviously you said this has kind of been a process of like self-understanding for the last kind of 5-6 years for yourself anyway. Have there been any like methodologies or kind of different mechanisms that you've adopted that have kind of just helped you maybe understand yourself a little bit better and make sure that you hit that right level without getting kind of overstimulated and then needing to retreat for a lot? Like, can you tell when you're approaching that threshold?
Yes. I think now I can, and I think just, it's putting boundaries in place and like being okay with saying no, and not in like an offensive way. Like I think it's very easy for people to get almost insulted if you just say like, thank you for the invite, but I'm not going to come. It's very easy to take it personally, and I have found ways of like communicating that to be like, I'm really sorry, this is nothing to do with you, I've just had a lot on today, I need to recharge, I'm going to make it up to you, as opposed to just sort of saying like, no, I don't have the energy for it. That can sometimes be interpreted in like a negative way. But I think, just having a boundary on like, what do I genuinely want to do? And I don't mean that in like a selfish way, but I always think if you force yourself to go to something that you don't want to be at, you're not really doing yourself a good service, and you're not going to be showing up in a way for that person that they deserve either. And so I think just realize if you've got a lot going on, kind of being selective with what do you genuinely want to go with, or what are you saying yes to that is more like people pleasing and feeling like you have to. And I think I would say in the last few months just found the confidence to put that boundary in place. I'm not worried if people think that I'm a social recluse or like rude for not coming, because I will always make it up to them, or I will go to part of it, but I will then say like, okay, but I'm probably going to leave it.
Yeah, it's not because you don't like them. Yeah. It's because of the energy that you're in. No, that makes sense. And it's like, me and Rob have spoken about this at length over the last kind of, probably over the last kind of 2 years actually. And I don't think it's linked, probably more than that actually. So I don't think it's linked to COVID. I think it's just, maybe it's linked to just kind of growing with, kind of with age and maturity and understanding of self, which should all kind of, hopefully, if you're doing work on yourself, should be going in the right direction. As we've gotten older, we've both said that we kind of become less and less compromising with who we spend our time with and with our own energy. Yeah. And to a certain degree, if someone, like being in, so I'm 33 now, I know I don't look it, thank you. But when I was like 24, Rob like that one. When I was like 24, if someone invited me to something, even though I'm an extrovert, if I was like, God, I'm absolutely battered, I'll be honest, I don't want to go, and I just want to hermit and kind of chill out and watch a movie and eat some gluten-free cookies on my own, I would probably still go, because I did have a narrative, even though I was quite confident in the way that I communicated and had conviction and had, I thought at the time, kind of fairly firm boundaries. I did think that it was selfish to not go to something because I wanted to spend time on my own. And it's actually taken quite a long time to kind of deconstruct that. And my tolerance and my kind of quota for social interaction before I become overstimulated is very high. So I massively empathize with introverts whose kind of quota for that is a lot lower, because it can be just the biggest ball ache when all you want to do is you just don't feel like your true self.
Yeah. I think there's a fine line though, because you could always use an example. Like imagine it's your best friend's birthday, and you suddenly decide that you're not really feeling it, you bail, and like I think you do have to like catch yourself. Although I suppose like something like that, you would, if it was my best friend's birthday, I would genuinely want to be there for her birthday. Yeah. If I didn't have the energy, I would find it somewhere. And so you do have to figure out like what are you willing to kind of
There's rational judgment in that. It can't be like, I've had a long day, mum, so I'm not coming to your wedding. Like something like that would be like preposterous. So there is some self-reported judgment there.
I think like what you said, like becoming a little bit more selective with who you give your energy to. When you start becoming like that, you start doing that, you will then naturally want to go and do those things with those people because they almost do give you energy and you love them as a person. Whereas I did find when I was younger, it was kind of like just this popularity thing, and you were friends with people that you didn't necessarily like align with, and it was just kind of like you were friends for the sake of being friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those kinds of things, I was just like, gone are the days I agreed to things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a standard part of youth.
Yeah.
Some good kind of like nuggets of wisdom and methodologies to kind of help introverts be a little bit more selective, again using a bit of rational judgment. You help in your business, like your brand is focused, I wouldn't say focused, I'd say you mainly help women, would that be correct?
Yes.
So how many online PT clients do you have now?
I'm currently working with 42.
Are they all women?
All women.
Why?
So I think a lot of my coaching is based around a lot of my own experiences, and I feel like that's where I kind of excel, is being able to empathize with them because I've probably been through something similar, if they've got a certain struggle in their journey. And I think I have a bit more of a kind of a softer approach, which I think could work definitely for some men. But I think because of my experiences, I find it a lot easier to resonate with the women, and they can, I suppose, resonate with my journey as well.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to ask. So kind of which way round is it, or is it both? Is it like, do you think that you have a particular brand and a particular persona that is kind of communicated out to the world, and it is mainly women that kind of land on that hook as such and then come in because they resonate with you? Has it ever been like a deliberate thing that you kind of want to only work with women or want to not work with men? Kind of which way round is it? Is it a little bit of both?
No.
Either would be fine.
And like even now, I would coach men. I just don't feel I would maybe be the best suited coach for them. Like if someone came to me, I wouldn't necessarily say like, no, I can't coach you. But I think I feel more passionate about helping women in that, like I've had my own struggles with like my hormone health, and I think that's something that I want to ensure doesn't happen for other women. And so I feel like that would almost, I wouldn't be able to use that as well if I was coaching men. So I don't think I would feel as helpful for them as I could be. But I'm not like, don't limit myself to it. It's just kind of like worked out that way.
Do you think that overall in the fitness industry, both in person and online, the vast majority of male clients are served by men, and the vast majority of female clients are served by women?
I think there's probably a balance for women, having a male coach or a female coach. I would say most men have a male coach, but I don't know, I've always had male coaches throughout my journey. But I don't know why.
I do think it skews that way, and I don't think that's a fitness thing. I think that's naturally kind of a cultural thing, in that I think that a lot of women that I know would be happy to be coached by a woman or by a man.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of men that I know that are genuinely super progressive, super kind of like equality driven, there's not even 1% of their brain that thinks they are superior to women, but I think they might feel a weird, not like conscious objection, but like subconscious objection as to, from being coached by a woman.
Yeah, I wonder.
Because maybe it's a physical thing, right? So I don't know.
I think there's a lot still in the fitness industry where you see something and you want to look like that. And so it's easy to kind of want to stick, I suppose, to like women to women, men to men. So I don't know. I feel, would you ever be coached by a woman?
I would now, and 100% honestly, would it challenge me? Probably a little bit, yeah. But the thing is, I'm aware of that. So obviously you and me are very good friends. Me and Rob are very good friends. You guys are very good friends as well. Now you're welcome. But
We're now better friends.
Yeah, you wish me.
Put yourself in the foot there.
Yeah, exactly. I do endeavour to do a lot of kind of introspection, self-investigation, and realistically, having been in one of the only parts of the British military that was only men, and having been experienced kind of like elite sport, I think that I think I might feel an interesting challenge being coached by a woman. But genuinely, it's because of that I probably would do it.
I think though I don't think it would be anything to do with like capabilities. I think it is just generally a different energy and what you respond better to. Like I personally don't think I would want to, I don't know, I don't feel like I would want a soft approach. And I'm not saying that guys and only women can give a soft approach, but I think there is something in the energy of the different sexes.
So do you think that is an innate thing? Like men and women are 100% equal, but foundationally different, and sometimes they are going to resonate more with people of their own sex, and that's okay?
Yeah. I don't think I would need like the experience. Like I wouldn't need a guy to be like, oh, I've been through that. I think I just, I don't know, maybe I need to do a bit more exploring around that.
Do you experience, so obviously you're kind of in the public eye in the world of the fitness industry, kind of a big deal, big name on campus, as they might say. Do you see, as a woman in the fitness industry, do you feel a pressure to sexualize your content?
I don't now. I did. I didn't feel a pressure to have to do it, but I felt that if I did, I would benefit from it in terms of like growth. It would help my exposure, I think, but I don't think it would feel authentic to me, and so I almost feel like I would be growing off something that doesn't actually feel authentic to me.
I mean, I definitely see that within you, and obviously we've had discussions about this over the last few days. And as a bit of kind of extra funny context, we've had discussions like this over the last week, and anything that I wanted to say for this discussion halfway through the chat, I just turn into like a deer in headlights, and you're like, Jim, were you going to ask me something? Nope. They're just like writing notes. I'm like, we have to keep this authentic and safe for this. No, I mean, I'm just interested because kind of the online presence that most people have in the fitness industry is Instagram. It is not blog posts. And Instagram, regardless of the fact that captions exist and are there and are read and are an option, it is innately, that is not the primary way that people consume content. Instagram is the way that people consume fitness content globally, and Instagram is innately a visual platform. And I remember you kind of giving me an example of one of your friends who's also in the industry that kind of split tested two different, basically the same post, effectively the same information, the same message was communicated. And it was basically a message that was something along kind of the personal development line. And one of the pictures was a little bit more bland and neutral, and perhaps even more kind of consistent and congruent with personal development.
Yeah.
And one of them was her in her underwear.
Yeah.
And that one was infinitely more successful.
Yeah.
In terms of like views and stuff.
Yeah, she even had feedback from people saying that the photo, it was like a photo of her in her underwear and a photo of her just like her face smiling. And some people's feedback was that they didn't even see the picture of her face come up on their feed. It was just the one.
Really?
Yeah. And like it's been like a well-known fact that, you know, if you put a bikini photo up with a caption, it will just generally get more exposure. I think it's all to do with like the algorithm and the time that someone spends looking at that post. The algorithm then recognizes that and sends it to more people.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I would say more sexualized images do get more exposure, and that in turn would give you growth. And like, I actually have no problem with women that do use that as a way to grow. In a way, there's part of me that almost feels like, should I have done that to almost get me to a better place? But I think I I'd rather be recognised for my knowledge and my abilities as a coach, and actually be and reach less people, but reach the right kind of people, than just have loads of people that like bikini photos that are actually never going to be in like a consumer, a customer in what I'm doing, or be interested in what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, and that's good that you feel that now. Just going back to something you said a second ago, you used to feel more pressure to do that, and you don't as much anymore. Do you think that's because the culture within the industry or Instagram has changed, and intellectual substance is now kind of enjoyed more, or do you think it's just now that you're at a stage now where you've kind of built a following without it, that you don't feel as though you need it as much? You're like, thank fuck, I've actually got here without having to do it.
Yeah, I feel I don't need it as much. I also think that it would be quite, like, people would see through it. Like, I don't think that means I can never post something that is a little bit more sexy or, you know, a bit more revealing. And like, I've had some of my friends call me out on it, being like, you've been in Dubai for 6 months and you've not even posted one bikini photo.
Yeah, stop being such a nun.
And then I'm like, I know, but I don't want to do it because I don't want it to look like I'm like trying to be, I don't know. And so I think sometimes it can maybe be like I'm quite stubborn about it, and maybe I just need to kind of post what I want to post. But yeah, I think for me, I just feel like I don't need to. And with the content that I do put out, I always try to put some meaning behind it, or something that someone can take away from it. And that's not to say that I would never put a caption with a bikini photo, and I definitely have pictures of me in my underwear, but not, it's more related to like my...
Rob's got on his phone.
More like related to like my fitness and like my physique, if I've done some sort of like challenge. Yeah, I think I just generally don't feel I need to do it. I don't have like much of a desire to do it. I don't know. So
what's interesting there is, so it sounds like you've changed and your situation has changed, not the industry as such. So that's why you feel less pressure. It's not because less pressure exists, it's because you're just less affected by it. But also, so even though you're not doing it, what's interesting is, and I imagine this is kind of the same for women everywhere, even if you're not hypersexualizing your content, with you sitting there saying, sometimes I think about it, but I think that it might be transparent, or that people might think it's kind of inconsistent with my brand, or it wouldn't be kind of consistent with the message or whatever. It's still a metric of what so you're still making it, it's still part of the decision-making process. It's not like it's not even thought about. It sounds like for you, and probably for every woman who has a following beyond a certain amount, it's still part of the decision-making process. Yeah. The funny thing is I never actually look at someone that does put something more revealing up in a negative light. I'm normally like, yeah, good for you. Go girl. Yeah. So is that true? Yeah. Okay. Do you think that other women in the fitness industry are as compassionate and feel, if you're feeling empowered from these other women, do you think that the general consensus of other women in the fitness industry is one of positivity and encouragement? I think it very much has to do with your current relationship to yourself, in that I know when I have not felt confident in myself, I've been massively triggered by someone embracing their own body. And so I'm then like, who does she think she is? But when I've like found a lot more confidence in myself, I found I can be a lot more supportive of other women. So I don't think it is a general thing. I think it's very individualized to specific people. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that is a flipping Gandhi level knowledge bomb there of like, I think it depends on their relationship with themselves and their own body. And I 100% agree. I 100% agree. I don't know I don't know the percentage of people in the general population that would self-diagnose that though. You know what I mean? They'd be like, oh God, you know what? I am triggered actually by seeing this woman with 100k followers, like pretty much naked on a beach. Like that pisses me off. Like she shouldn't do it but I acknowledge that I'm probably feeling like that today because I'm not feeling great about myself. I don't know how many women out there or how many men out there would be self-aware enough to kind of make that self-assessment. I'm not saying there's none of them. I'm saying I think generally there is an increasing amount, hopefully, but I think the percentage of people that are able to look at why they're triggered by like sexualized content or whatever, and I see this a lot in my female friends that really like fucking slut shame, and the fact that they're doing that, the female friends that I know, I don't think the percentage of people that I know being able to self-diagnose would be that high, to be honest.
I think it's that saying, like, if you want to look inside and work out what areas of growth you need to work on, it's like look at what triggers you and makes you defensive. But yeah, I didn't always have that awareness. I would very much think it was them, they're doing something wrong. I think that comes as well with, like, I suppose with, I say an Instagram following, my following is not like, you could compare it to someone with millions and it would seem quite small, but when I started to grow, I did get, negative comments online, and I think once you start getting that, you really have to work on like how you deal with that. And one of the things that I think everyone is now aware of is like someone saying something negative to you actually says more about them as a person than you. And I think once you realize that, you then you can relay that into other areas. So knowing that you thinking something bad about that person because of that post is probably because of an insecurity in you, not something they're doing. So I think that's kind of when I started to go down that route.
There we go. Got the fish hand in there. Well, that's good to say, but obviously if someone did leave you a negative comment being like, you're there in your bikini, you silly slag, or I don't know what people say. I'm not big enough to have any haters.
It was so hard for you to come up with a negative comment there.
Well, I literally have no idea what it would be. But it's like, so obviously you and me spoke about recently in terms of like crossing the bridge between like intellectual comprehension. So if you had that and it was like, that's not nice to hear. That's a horrible flipping thing to hear, right? You intellectually understand that has nothing to do with you. Your conscious, logical, rational brain knows that that's not you. That's because it's something to do with them. How quickly did you go from being aware of that? You knew that. That's fairly logical. I think a lot of people would logically understand that. How quickly in your journey did you go from intellectual comprehension to emotionally experiencing that to the degree that it actually didn't emotionally trigger you? Does that make sense?
Yes, but I would say it does emotionally trigger me now, depending on what they're saying. Like seeing someone else do something that triggers me, I can quite easily detach the emotion from it because I realise like, oh, that's why. I think as soon as you get the understanding, you can then kind of work on it. But I think it's when they say something that is quite personal to you and like they attack you and like the way that you are or something that you said or something that you've done, I still have a really hard time like not feeling the emotion about it. And it's exactly what you said, like you could get people, your friends saying to you like, oh, but you had so many positive comments, you got that one negative comment, just let it go. But sometimes that one negative comment can cut a lot deeper, and it then, like I've had it, I think it was maybe like 5 years ago, I put up a post about how I had gone from being like a very unhealthy, underactive, unhappy teenager, and I think at the time my BMI was in the overweight category, but I wasn't like morbidly obese, and so I sort of put this caption that I'd gone from being overweight to now like, and the post was like celebrating the fact that I was now featured in like a fitness magazine, and I put this post out and I'm so proud of myself because I literally think I'd been on like a 4-year journey at that point. And the first comment I got was like, if you think you were overweight when you started, you're the reason that women have eating disorders and self-confidence issues and like have bad body image. And honestly, when that was so never my intention, and I had to like really remind myself that she doesn't know me. She didn't know me when I was, when I was overweight, and that's her perception of, she didn't know my journey, so I had to just remind myself of that. But that's always something that I think I've had in the back of my mind since that comment, was like, I never want to put out something that could potentially be more damaging than helpful. And I think that's almost where a whole new topic, but that's where I struggle with Instagram is like, I think fitness needs needs so much more context around posts. It can't just, because everyone's just gonna take a little snapshot of what you're doing or what you've said and kind of put their own impression on it. But I think, the comment that lady left me has always like stuck with me. And you can just say like, oh, she was obviously not having a good day. But I think if the comment is something quite personal,
absolutely,
it's a lot harder.
Because it's a big part of your value system to literally never do that. Yeah, I mean, the reason when you said that I looked at Rob is we're quite, we're a little, I'd say we're both a little bit slightly right of centre in regards to our belief that people should take responsibility for their own situation, even if it's something that's not necessarily their fault. It might not be someone's fault that they're in X situation, but it may be is then still likely their responsibility to move past that. And I just, even more than believing that people shouldn't sexualize themselves to grow or whatever, one of the things that just literally grips my shit is this fucking idea that people shouldn't be able to post something that showcases or is demonstrable of their success or part of their journey because it makes someone else feel bad. I'm like, that is a terrible way to live. Like, it's a cultural narrative that I really, really, really detest, the idea that we should just all fucking dim our own lights so much just in case it makes, Susan from Human Resources get pissed off with the way she looks. I just think it's such a dangerous way to be. And even if it affected kind of my growth and my following on my channel, but I stayed true to that message, I wouldn't care. Like, I just think I just think it's such a ludicrous thing. So yeah, I can imagine like the content of what you kind of shared there. I just unbelievably at every level disagree with that woman.
Yeah, I think it goes back to as well how you feel about yourself. I think generally when you're happier in yourself, you can be happier for other people, and that what they're doing and what they're achieving doesn't take away from what you're doing and what you're achieving. But I think it's always something that's in the back of my mind when I share posts now, unfortunately.
If you have a PhD in a particular topic and you are known for being an expert in that, and then you spread misinformation, like, you have a responsibility for sharing the truth, but you don't ever have a responsibility for the way that someone else feels about your journey. And I think that's something that I don't know. I'm rendered speechless by that flipping thing. Kind of going back to the introvert thing very quickly. Either on social media or in life, did you feel as though there were certain challenges that were harder for you as an introvert if you wanted to grow? Like, if you were to like, right, something that would help me out right now is reaching out to a particular sponsor or X or Y or Z or whatever it may be. Do you feel as though you were ever kind of at a disadvantage for being an introvert in that regard?
Yeah, well, that in itself, like, I always share on my stories like funny memes about like not wanting to pick up the phone to anyone, and like so I wouldn't, networking I found so much harder. Like, I wouldn't go out of my way to contact other companies or collab with other influencers or fitness trainers because that was just like a no-go area for me. It was like, no, I want to do this on my own. I can do this on my own. And like back when Instagram first started, that was how people grew. They would collab, they would tag each other, and like I wasn't getting involved in those situations. So I do feel like I missed out in that sense. And I just think like being on camera, talking to camera is something I really had to learn, and like teaching on.
Well, you're smashing it today, kid. Keep it up.
Thanks. It's not so bad now. I tell you what, teaching live classes on Instagram throughout lockdown was, I remember I couldn't eat for like days leading up to it. I had this like sick feeling in my stomach, and it wasn't something I was doing for my own channel. When I first started doing like live classes, it was for a friend of mine who had like a huge following, and so I was almost doing it to his following, and so that in itself made me even more nervous. But with that, it was just practice, and I don't think anyone finds it anything easy the first time they do it if it's a little bit out of their comfort zone, but then just doing it every day, or I think I was doing like five classes a week. I became a lot more confident speaking to camera, and that was live. So then that became easier to do stories. And so sometimes when I say I'm an introvert, they're like, oh, but you seem so natural when you talk to a story. And I think for me, I always try and think to camera, it's a little bit easier because I can just imagine like I'm just talking to one other person. When it's like obviously a huge group of people and going to events and like teaching live classes in front of people, I think I still struggle with that. And I think naturally most introverts would, and they probably wouldn't put themselves in that position. And I've had a few people ask me if I'm an online coach because it's less like human interaction.
I was going to ask that question. Do you think it's part of it? It would make sense if it did. You're self-aware and you're playing to your strengths effectively in a way there.
So I used to teach classes, like strength and conditioning classes at a studio, and there was normally like 30 people per class. And it was actually, I was finding it getting harder and harder and harder. And instead of being able to get into the class and like be there for the members, I remember just being so nervous about doing like the intro and like the demo and explaining the class that it was almost like a script that I had to learn instead of actually knowing what the class was and interacting with all the members. And so I actually left that job purely because I was finding it harder and harder. It was giving me more anxiety. And
so there wasn't if you don't mind me kind of cutting in there wasn't an adaptation to, there was a certain amount of fear in the baptism of fire in the initial stages of undergoing that challenge, and then you adapted. It actually got worse.
It got worse more because I think the people I was surrounded with, like my approach wasn't, I didn't feel it was appreciated. It was, you need to become more confident on the floor. And I get it, like it was the style of the studio. And I felt like I had to be someone to be successful and be good at that job. I felt like I had to be someone that didn't feel natural to me, and I think that's where I really struggled. And so I knew I needed to take a break from that. And even before that, I was doing one-to-one PT, which I absolutely loved. And it sort of just came at a time where I wanted to travel and therefore had to take the business online. And I think the comfort that I got from it, being able to help people in my own time, in my own space, really worked for me, and it I flourished in it. And so I don't think it was like something I sort of that was a safety blanket. I think it's just working out as a person what makes me the most comfortable to be able to help people in the best way possible, and it just ended up being online.
So it's the way that you genuinely believe at your core that you can offer the most value to people, and on a Venn diagram, if you've got that, the way that you can help people the most, and the way that I'm able to be the most me and the best version of me, and online coaching happened to be in that middle section. So that's a win-win. Do you think that sharing, I'll rephrase that. I think that across the board, both sexes, assuming that you still subscribe to the idea of there being two, that's a whole nother video. Do you think that demonstrations of vulnerability, or I think demonstrations of vulnerability on social media are now something that is incredibly well responded to, especially because there is this weird connection between physical fitness and personal development. There are a lot of personal trainers who a huge portion of their content and their message goes away from physiology and flipping hypertrophy clusters and tempo pause reps, and a lot more into mindset and a lot more into personal. And there is this like personal development kind of quote unquote kind of life coach part of being in the fitness industry. And I've seen a trend of demonstrations of vulnerability in the form of like, even though if someone wouldn't say this, but like, even though I'm person X and I'm a big name on social media, I'm really struggling with this at the moment. And it doesn't have the piss taken out of it. It's like incredibly empowered. You kind of seen a similar thing?
Yeah, definitely. You about to ask something else?
The interesting thing that I was going to ask is, and I don't know whether or not it's just me being super cynical, do you think there's a portion of that more recently of people maybe faking it a little bit? Because maybe some of these particular messages, some of these bits of like raw content of someone crying or a post of them, I'm really struggling with this right now, is so bloody well responded to in a really beautiful way, because the people that are reacting to it and responding to it are like super supportive, but it might just feed the algorithm enough that people maybe kind of semi-consciously maybe take advantage of that.
Yes, to a degree, I think it does exist. I personally can't think of someone that I know that you know does that where it's so obvious. I don't know, because part of me likes to think that, you know, people aren't that terrible. They're not going to make up, you know, that they're not going to make something up for the sake of engagement. I'm sure it does happen. And I think I'm sometimes conscious, like when I'm opening up about something, it's not so much that I think it might come across that I'm looking for more engagement. It's like, I don't want people to think that I want their sympathy or for them to feel sorry about me. I don't know if, I don't know, do you know anyone do you follow anyone where you get that impression?
If I did, I wouldn't name names, but genuinely, there's not a specific example that I can think of. I just think there is a possibility that I don't think that anyone would completely make something up. A, because I think it might hurt their conscience too much, and B, I think that it would probably be so easy to reverse engineer and people to find out that it's bullshit. But I do think that there's a possibility that some people could embellish how much they're struggling with something, specifically so that they can share it on social media, specifically so that they can either get attention or help their following grow.
Do you think people almost feel a pressure to have, you know, they're almost saying like toxic positivity, and if you're always happy, do you think that there are some people that almost feel like they have to show something negative to be more relatable?
Maybe, if that, which I suppose maybe, so if they're doing it for that reason, then that's, to me, I kind of experience that as a little bit more forgivable. It's like I'm gonna show this so that people do resonate with it, so that people realise that I'm human or whatever. I think that's more forgivable than doing it specifically to grow. And generally, I actually can't think of a specific example, but I just have a weird kind of narrative in my head that that's something that maybe I saw something once and then thought just seems a little bit disingenuous, seems a little bit fake. I don't know.
I'm sure it does exist. I think like my experience with that is it all ties in with like people being on the journey with you and being able to relate to your experiences, and I think it has really solidified, like, I suppose if I mean like my relationship with my followers, but I think one thing that's been really nice for me to see is how invested people have been in my journey, because they know when I was in a really bad place, they've seen that side of my life, and now they can kind of see me coming out the other side, and I think it's almost given people like a little bit of hope. And so for me, it's really important for me to be able to share those things, because if I'm going through it now, someone that sees it might also be going through it, or they might look back at my page and, you know, I'm out the other side and they're going through it now, and that kind of gives them a little bit of hope. And so it's more, I feel I want to share those things because it's normally received well, but from a good place. As in, I'm not just doing it because I'm like, oh, people will, you know, double tap this, or they'll feel sorry for me. And I don't know, I think it's just, it creates a safe space for other people to then feel like they can share. And I think that's what people like.
I agree. I think that's a beautiful reason to share. And I don't think there's anything innately bad about sharing a struggle. I think there's something incredibly beautiful about that. As long as it is genuine.
It's a struggle.
Yeah, as long as it's real, and as long as the intention is to offer value in some way and kind of give people permission to do the same and to help people resonate and stuff. What is the most lovely, amazing message you've ever got from a follower or a fan? Other than Rob.
We love you, Georgie.
I can't pinpoint one. Do you know what? There's been so many, like, recently, where I think, just tying into what we were saying, people have sent me messages about how they are genuinely really happy for me, that I'm a lot happier, and they can see it. And I think just having people recognise that, it's almost like you've got like a little team of cheerleaders.
Yeah, that's wicked.
And I think just that kind of, messages like that will always mean a lot to me. And then I guess just messages from like people who have I've been able to help them with something to do with their fitness or health journey, and just, you'll have had this where people will say you genuinely changed their life. It might not be everything that it might not be the fitness plan that you prescribed them, but them generally feeling happier about, or feeling more confident in themselves is related to other areas of their life.
Absolutely.
And therefore they've got into a happier place. Things like that always very,
nourish
very
your
cool.
soul. That's incredible. I love that. Well, that's beautiful and wholesome. So let's move away from that. What's the weirdest fucking message you've ever got from a follower?
Oh God, have I told you about this?
See across her arm straight away. Instant defensive stance you see there.
Have I ever told you about it? You asked me this because you know, or?
I know one of them. I know one of them. If that's not the weirdest, I don't know what it is. You don't have to name any names.
I do get some really weird messages from like I don't know, dominant accounts, and like people basically asking me, is this you guys?
This is right, yeah. You've been rumbled, mate. SWAT team's on their way, Rob.
Like asking me really like in-depth sex questions, and then like deleting it and then sending me another one like 5 minutes later. I feel like that's quite a common thing on Instagram, sadly.
Yeah, I get that all the time.
The worst one I got was like, I have male followers that engage in my content quite a lot, and in a very natural way. Like, it's just a very friendly way. Like they'll respond to something with like that little 100% sign or whatever, and like if I've done a workout, they'll say like great job. And there was this one guy who had followed me for a while, and he was really like supportive, and like it was so not creepy, and he just seemed like a normal nice guy.
Great guy.
Maybe I'm sure he is, but just one day I opened up a message that he sent me, and he used to message me quite frequently, so it wasn't that I wasn't prepared for what I was about to see. And it was literally, and Instagram, this was I think before Instagram used to blur things that they deemed like inappropriate. And I literally just opened my phone, and it was this guy standing completely naked with his dick out in front of like the camera with a selfie. And the worst part about it was just like he'd written a caption being like, working on my tan. And it was almost like he'd forgotten to put his shorts on.
Oh.
It was just so blasé. And like it really caught me off, but like I wasn't prepared. I almost felt a little bit violated in that I hadn't welcomed. I was not prepared to see it, and like it was just.
It's Georgie's origin story for becoming an introvert.
Yeah. The fear of going outside.
And I blocked him straight. I reported him, blocked him straight away. But I think that's probably the worst thing that I've ever received. But at least it gave me a good story.
Well, there we go. It was worth it purely for this moment of you sharing it right now. Well, that is definitely the peak of the video. I don't think we can go any more interesting than the guy working with his hand. I imagine that you have kind of comprehensive insight into the fitness industry kind of as a whole, and you have a lot of contacts and friends that are also kind of in the fitness, health and wellness space and different sections of it. People who are body transformations, bodybuilders, athletes, kind of slightly more mindset and kind of holistic approaches. If there was one change, if you had a magic wand, you could make one global change in the fitness industry, what would it be?
Oh my God. That's a really tough question.
Thank you.
One change in the fitness industry. Like, there's a few. I would love for people to actually educate for everyone to want to educate their clients on how to live like a healthy, sustainable lifestyle in the long run, as opposed to showing snapshots of them and selling like these quick fixes that are ultimately going to keep people in this cycle of like yo-yoing between different approaches, and actually helping them understand what's going to make them feel better in the long run. We kind of talked about this the other day. Instead of it being, you know, you're going to do fitness for 6 weeks and then you're going to reach your goal and you're going to feel great.
Yeah.
But what happens after that? And for me, I would love for there to be more people looking at the bigger picture and the client's long-term health and journey, and showing them how to do it on their own. Like if they still need the accountability, then great. But instead of it being kind of showing unattainable things that are maybe, you know, people who are enhanced and they're showing a picture of themselves being like, you can get like this in 6 weeks. That's great. Anyone can cut out their carbs and do hours and hours of cardio. Not anyone, but a lot of people can. But can they then sustain that in the long run? No, and if anything, that's going to give them a very negative relationship to fitness because their experience won't have been an enjoyable one. And yeah, I think just making it more of a lifestyle, I would love to see more people promoting that. And I think it's something that's definitely happening more recently.
I agree.
And people are being called out on it as well.
Mm.
But I still think there's some stuff that I still see now, and I'm like,
first of all, I agree with that actually, and I think that the good news is that is kind of coming to fruition.
Yeah.
I think I think people are starting to realise that it's a kind of a futile pursuit to spend so much time chasing silver bullets, and it's like these quick fixes, and I think maybe that comes from just the general narrative change, or maybe that comes from just so many fitness industry consumers that have experienced themselves get to a certain stage and then go back, and then get to a certain stage and then go back, and they're like, the process has to be kind of enjoyable. We have to find a sustainable way, because this is something that is, you know, this is like maintenance is required. It's not something I can do for 6 weeks to make sure that I'm fit in 50 years. Yeah. It's something that has to be as part of your kind of day-to-day, week-to-week routine forever. Which means if it's going to be part of your day-to-day forever, you need to kind of enjoy it, or at least not hate it.
Yeah, and I think it's not doing things, like I feel really strongly about saying to my clients, like, please go and socialize, go out for dinner. I want to teach you how to be able to go out for dinner and still reach your goal, instead of hermiting for 12 weeks, reaching your goal, then you go out for dinner with your mates and you don't even know what to do, so you undo all of that hard work. And I think that just leads to them feeling shitter about themselves.
So, personally and professionally, what's the future for Georgie Harris?
Personally, I have no clue, and I'm learning to be okay with that. I've learned to accept that I'm not bound by what I think life should look like, and I'm kind of just going with the flow. And I think yeah, going with the flow. I think professionally, I'm excited to grow with a team. So I work with a coaching team called Endeavour, and I'm just excited to see what happens with that, because I've obviously been focusing on my own personal business for 7 years now, and I got to a point where it just felt a little bit lonely, and so I wanted to join a team, and already now that's presented more opportunities for me in a month than my own stuff did. So pursuing that, and I think just sticking with the online coaching.
Georgie Harris, everyone. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome.
No, it's very well. It's been really good. I think acknowledging that introversion and extroversion is a spectrum, and you're not in a bucket at either ends of the room, I think is hugely important. I think giving people permission to, and encouraging people to kind of assess as to what their own quota is for how much kind of social interaction they need, and give themselves permission to say no selectively, and kind of from a rational place kind of say no to things if it's not going to serve them. And especially your perception on women and kind of sexualized content in the fitness industry is interesting to me. I'm a straight white man, so I am trying to do what I believe more straight white men should do, which is engage in dialogue that's going to help me grow and develop my level of understanding. Because there are going to be challenges and experiences that I am never going to own, and I am never going to fully comprehend. But at the very least I can do is try and develop my comprehension by engaging in dialogue with people like yourself that can kind of give me a little bit, even a sliver of insight into what that's like. So thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Enjoy Dubai.
Thank you.
Give me a high five, stay awesome.